Hey there, welcome to this lecture. Today in this lecture, we'll be going to discuss about why deployment matters, right? So our main goal will be just to understand why deployment environment exists, right? So how they are reacting in different environment, right? And so to understand all of this process, first of all, let's go with this diagram, right? So one by one, we'll be going to try to deconstruct everything like each and every component, right? So you can have a kind of clear picture. Even if you are a beginner in the software engineering or you are kicking start your career, right? But still, you need to understand why deployment is extremely necessary for developers or engineers or architects, right? And while it comes to building something, this is really cool. Like you can write your code, right? And you can just like run it in your local machine, right? This is really cool. It's going to be a kind of couple of minutes of work, and finally you can see the output results. But what if I want to see your application, then how you will going to share with me? Definitely, you need to share your source code with me with the help of maybe a kind of zip bundle, or maybe you are sharing your screen in a video call. That's what exactly it's not the customers are looking for, right? So how customer going to access your application? Somewhere you need to put your application source code, right, in a kind of running condition, so customer can directly reach out to that particular the location of your drive or maybe address or something, and they can access your application features. This is what the main goal it is, right? So in short, in theory, you can say deployment means taking your code from your local machine and making it available to the real user in somewhere in the remote, right, in the cloud, or maybe in kind of like in a remote machine somewhere. So where user can directly reach out to your source code or application by typing, as an example, www.shoppingexample.com, right, where user can buy something, right? So deployment means we are taking our local machine source code and deploying it in a remote machine somewhere, so where user can easily access our application features, right? So first of all, let's try to understand how these things are segregated. So while we are building something in our local machine, all right, it can be a kind of front-end project or maybe back-end project or maybe microservices or etc., right? Then these two applications, like our front-end and back-end, we can spin in our local machine, and we can just like connect with each other, something like this, right? So while we are running our application, then our front-end application will be going to run on our local host, all right? As an example, localhost port 3000. And maybe backend project will be going to run on localhost port, and let's say 8000, right? So then our front end directly know, like, yeah, this is the backend application address. Let's go ahead, the connect with our front end and backend. So this is serving the purpose. So where you can directly build something in the same machine, and you can just like see the output. But while it comes to deployment or building our product to test it out in a remote environment, all right, or maybe in a kind of cloud environment, then some of the behavior will be going to be changed, right? So which is potentially the same behavior may not be available in the local machine, because your backend project is directly tied up to with your local DB. As an example from here, right? It's a local DB. You can say this is DB, right? So while it comes to communicate with your database, right, then definitely it has a kind of very faster experience. You will get it from here. So that means your front-end application will get faster response from there, right? Maybe timeout will not going to happen, all right? Maybe some cases, maybe you can look into here, like your any kind of dependency you are resolving using your local machine memory and the CPU, GPU, and all of the resources you are utilizing, right? So the moral of the story is, if your machine is faster, you will get the faster response. But that is not the thing it's going to happen in the remote environment, right? That's why there are different environments or exist, right? So where we can test it out our application in different phases, right? Just to make sure our final product has to be polished correctly, and it is like performing the way we are expecting to deliver to the customer, right? So now you can see our front-end and back-end application we are packaging correctly, right? We are just like creating some kind of repository, or we are pushing to a kind of somewhere where we can maintain our subversions, all right? And definitely, technically, we can say like here we can consider as a kind of GitHub, all right? GitHub, right? Or maybe similar kind of like a version control we can use. But as of now, we are going to discuss the GitHub. GitHub is a familiar one, right? Which is you'll be going to find a little bit comfortable to understand. So now you can see we are pushing our code to the GitHub, right? So right here, right? Then inside the GitHub, we have certain sort of scripts we are going to write right there, which is going to take care of our deployment process, right? This is what we need to understand majorly, right? So which is called pipeline, right? It's called continuous delivery or continuous integration pipeline. So those things we'll be going to discuss in further lectures in details. But this one, in this lecture, we just try to understand why deployment matters, or how we can just like take into account of various components when it comes to the deployment, right? So now you can see we are setting up some kind of pipeline where we are going to push our code. As soon as we are pushing the code, that particular pipeline will get triggered automatically, right? So it's a kind of, you can say, it's a form of automation script, right? And besides the automation script, we are having some kind of deployment configuration also right there, right? So where we will be going to write some scripts, right? If we are pushing the front end, then we need to deploy this front end in a kind of static deployment, right? In some sort of maybe bucket, right? Maybe S3 bucket, or maybe object storage, or maybe somewhere where we can directly deliver our static pages, which is not going to be, we are not necessarily need to spin a kind of bigger server to deploy our front end application. So in this case, you can say, like, this configuration will take care from the GitHub, right? And which is called the entire stuff, like all of the automation script, deployment configuration, and pipeline, everything is run, all right, in a kind of runner machine. Right? Now you are thinking, like, what is runner, right? So runner is a kind of virtual machine, which is we can provision. It's a kind of, you can say, short-lived temporary machine, or maybe container, right? Where it is having all of the pre-installed libraries as a promo. We can say it is coming with Ubuntu or Windows or Mac or something like that. So where we can run all of these automation script and our deployment configuration. And based on all of these automation script, runner will be decide like which action we need to trigger, right? Based on which branch we are pushing the code, and now where we just like try to deployment. So as an example, while we are pushing our code, then we'll be going to we can decide like this front-end code or this back-end code, is it dedicated to our customers or our developers or our quality assurance engineers, right? So where they can validate or maybe verify the features, right? So now let's try to understand the environments. So in this case, runner can decide like which environment to put, all right? So here you can see this is the kind of dev environment, or you can say this is going to be, right, short-lived env, right? So this is not going to be like static env environment, which is it will going to stay forever. It's not like that. This is you can other way around. You can say ephemeral. Ephemeral is definitely it's going to be a kind of new word for you, right? While it comes to the deployment, ephemeral means like short-lived environment. When it's needed, we'll be going to provision this particular infrastructure and particular machine, and we'll be going to deploy our source code. It's going to stay for a while, maybe a couple of hours, until our colleagues going to be they are viewing or maybe reviewing your code, and we can verify like that particular feature, whatever we are proposing, it is working correctly with the short-lived environment. Then we can merge our code, or then we can proceed further. Let's go and provide these new features to our quality assurance engineers. They can directly check it and validate. Once the validation and all of these checks are passed, then we can just like put it to our production environment. So technically, it's going something like this, right? And it will be go like this here, right? So now we can just like put it this one as a kind of temporary, all right? So you can see this is what the environment it is, right? So dev environment means like well developers can test it out their temporary features. They can try it out as many as like the features or they are introducing. Each and every features will be having their own environment. So as a from what I can say, let's say login feature, I have just created my login feature, then this particular temporary environment will be going to create. Then we can test it out login features. Then our login features are approved, or maybe we can say we are good to go with this login feature in from our developer perspective. Then we're going to merge this like the feature to the staging branch, then staging environment. Then once this staging deployment is successful, then this particular environment will be going to be erased automatically from the picture like this, right? So this is going to be like completely go out of the scope, right? You can say like this, right? it will be going to delete from there, right? Then similar applies, like you have, let's say, two the features, one for login or one for, let's say, customer profile. Then both of the feature will create two different type of, like, the ephemeral environment, the short-lived environment, and those environment will be stay for a while until your feature is going to be complete, right? And we can set up all of these things in the deployment configuration here. So what deployment configuration is going to control it? It's going to control until your application is tested correctly. It will going to stay right here, and after a certain time, if your application is like it stays still right there, right, it is not doing anything, then after a certain time, deployment configuration automatically delete that particular environment from the memory, right, from the infrastructure. So we can save some of the process and money from there, right? This is how actual the deployment process are working. So now we can see we have three environments. So staging environment is being used for the QA, for quality assurance, right? So the testers or all of the stakeholder or people there, they just try out the new feature, then they can test it out right here. So where maybe buying the products and making some kind of mock test, or maybe using test card, they can just, like, buy the product or do the same experience just like the production does. You can say it's a mirror of production, but it has all of the credentials, or everything is going to be used for the testing purpose, right? So once that the staging environment is done, right, everything is tested, then staging environment things we can just, like, deploy to the production environment. And this staging environment and production environment is a kind of, you can say, permanent environment. It's staying together. So where your colleagues or your whoever working together with you, then they can also just merge their pieces right here. So together, our quality assurance people, they can just, like, test it out everything right before shipping to the production environment. And similar applies also going with the front end also. You can see front end, we have the three different buckets. One is going to be for development, dev bucket, right? And the stage bucket and the production bucket. But while it comes to deployment, the static environment for the front end, the similar thing is gonna happen for this one also, right? So this, you can say, this is also going to be similar, just like, temporary leave environment. And while it's having the connection to our the front end, right? So in terms of, like, while we need to test it out, the development version, then your PR, right, your feature, that particular feature, we will be going to have some kind of prefix or maybe postfix while inside this deployment configuration. Then that is the way we can always gonna reach out to that particular version, all right, temporary version from the front end also. And now similar things gonna be applied for staging and the production version of the front end. Will be going to stay always right there, right? Then all of the three environments we're going to expose with the help of, like, CloudFront distribution and using some kind of the Route 53, or we can set it up Cloudflare also, where we can use directly your company domain or authorized stuff, right, to access all of the environments, right? But the production environment, there are no any kind of authentication. Directly customer can access that production environment. So now you can see our front end, while we are building our application here, our front end can directly talk to our backend project, right? But in the real life, while we are going to deploy our production environment, right, then there are certain configurations we need to do additionally, right, to reach it out from the front end application to our backend application. And even all of the environment, even, let's say, front end application, front end environment for dev, front end environment for stage, each and every environment will be having their the API gateway configuration. That is, we can add right here in the deployment configuration, right? So this is the way the whole deployment things are working. I know this is in the very first look, looks a little bit complex, but nothing to worry. We'll be going to do all of these things in hands-on in our upcoming lectures, where we'll be going to write our definitely we will be not going to write code for the front end and back end. I have plenty of repositories where I have just prepared for you, just to make it easy and quick. So you can download all of the source code from the front end and the back end projects, and you can just, like, clone it, and together we are going to set up all of the GitHub stuff and all. Then we'll be going to put our hands on the infrastructure to understand, like, how we can set it up all of these different environments, and how we can set up our runners to trigger certain actions. And these configurations, automation script and deployment configuration, we will write it together. Cool, perfect. then that's all for this lecture. In the upcoming lectures, we'll be going to discuss about what is the difference between the monolithic and the microservice, and how we can differentiate like deployment process for the monolithic and microservices, because both of the architecture are completely different. And while we are planning our deployment, then we need to configure our deployment configuration also accordingly. Otherwise, we'll be ended up with some kind of like misconfiguration, which is going to lacking your application performance and all, right? So we need to wisely select our infrastructure accordingly. All right, then see you in the next lecture. Thank you.